In a rapidly changing market, speed to insight is everything. AI search is the newest feature on eMarketer Pro Plus. Helps you streamline research, delivering context-driven answers in seconds. It's almost too quick. No more endless searching, just relevant insights to power your strategy. Stay ahead with AI search exclusively on Pro Plus. Learn more on our website, eMarketer.com. Hey gang, it's March. It's Monday, and it's also March the 10th. Jenny, Paola, and listeners, welcome to Behind the Numbers, an eMarketer video podcast. I don't know why I'm shouting. I'm excited for no reason. I'm Marcus. Today we'll be discussing the youngest of the Gen Z people. And for that conversation, I'm joined by two folks. We start by introducing our VP of Everything Research, recording from New York. It's Jennifer Pearson.
Happy to be here.
Hello there. And we also have with us our demographics analyst living in that same metropolis. It's Paola Flores Marquez.
Hi, Marcus. Thanks for having me back.
Hello, of course. Today's fact. Where is Earth's water? This sounds like more of an existential question than it is. Why is Earth water? How? No. Where is it? 70% of the world is water, which people probably know. Of the water part, 97% of the global water supply is in the oceans. You may not be surprised to learn, but that's a lot of it. So it doesn't leave very much left for fresh water. So that leaves 3% of the water on the world is fresh water. Of that fresh water, 69% of it is in glaciers and ice caps, which is amazing. I didn't realize how it was. I thought most of it you'd be able to see. Well, you can still see it. You get it. 30%.
You see it more and more every day.
Exactly. Unfortunately, that number is going in the wrong direction. Yes.
Yeah.
It can go in the opposite direction, though. We're just not right now because we're ruining the planet. But it has happened where glaciers are obviously formed over millennia or over short periods of time. Right now, they're going in the opposite direction because of humans. So 69% of fresh water is in glaciers and ice caps. 30% of it is in the ground. You can't see that. That leaves just 1% of fresh water that can be found in lakes, which is staggering because there are a lot of them. But that's basically none of the fresh water that you can see.
Fun fact, 90% of the world's ice is found in Antarctica. And wow. I know this only last night from working on a project with my son who is studying Antarctica. I just thought it was so somewhat related to what your trivia question was.
It's very related. The real question is, what share of homework is actually done by parents?
And older cousins, I have to throw in.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. All the grades, which is a referendum on my bad grades, on my mother, and my dad didn't really help. But if that means if you get a bad grade, the parent takes it quite personal because they're like, that was pretty much all me. So did I deserve a C? Anyway, today's real topic. I have no idea how teenagers' media use is changing. All right, folks, we're talking about teens today. Who are they? What do we mean by teenagers, Jenny? Because it depends on who you ask. There are different definitions. What's ours?
Sure. eMarketer defines teens as ages 12 to 17. So it does include 12-year-olds. That's our formal definition.
Okay.
Some research firms use 13 to 17, a true teen age group.
Mm-hmm.
Teens are about 30% of Gen Z. They're all Gen Z as we define Gen Z right now. So all of them are squarely in the Generation Z.
Okay.
They make up about 30% of that generation, and they make up about 6% of the total population of the US.
About 6% of the total population. Okay. And 18 is technically teen, 19 is technically teen. Is it because it's just a different life stage in terms of going to college?
Correct. They're classified as adults. As they turn 18 in the United States, you're classified as an adult. So then we're talking adult Gen Z.
Okay. Brain doesn't stop developing until you're 25 years old. Just learned that the other day. So it's, shocking to say that 18 is an adult. But okay, so we're talking about 12 to 17 most of the time, unless there's a study that has different age range. That's what we're talking about today. And as Jenny pointed out, the kind of younger Gen Z folks. Let's talk first of all, Paula, about Gen AI. We've been talking about it a lot on the show. It's unavoidable. What's young people's relationship with this new technology?
So teens today are increasingly comfortable using Gen AI for like regular tasks, like their homework. They use it to entertain themselves. Some of them have used it as a self-soothing mechanism, like typing in their problems and getting feedback. So right now, according to Common Sense Media, about 7 out of 10 teens use at least one type of Gen AI. Um, and I think the most common kinds are the search engine summaries, which are very, like, we all use those because they've already been implemented into things like Google.
Hmm.
But there is a huge uptick in teens using generative text and so chatbots at a higher rate than the rest of the population.
Okay. The search engines thing's interesting because they're using it, but they're using it a lot, right? Like 20% of them, I think it was the number I saw from your recent report on this, 20% using it daily. So it's a different type of usage than other folks who maybe technically have used it before once, or used it once per month, or used it once per week. This is very regular usage. You mentioned that they're using it for homework as well as for a lot of other reasons. That Common Sense Media survey, it kind of felt like the reasons could be broken down to three tiers. So the first tier was homework.
Mhm.
53% of teens saying they use it for homework help, Gen AI. That's kind of a tier all by itself. And then tier two, with about 30 to 40% of teens saying this is why they use Gen AI, included using it because they're bored,
Mhm.
using it for translation,
Mhm.
brainstorming, writing a document or email, creating an image or video, or summarizing something. That's kind of tier two reasons. And then tier three reasons, close to 20% of teens using it for this. Activities included creating content as a joke, personal advice, which I think you mentioned, and using it to plan an activity. So a lot of different reasons, but quite a big variation in how many folks are using it for those different activities.
Yeah, I was thinking about it as I was writing it, and I was struck by how similar it is to the way that millennials had unfettered access to the internet as teens. And there's like a huge gap between parents who think their kids are using Gen AI, and like the teens that are using it. And
Yes.
so similarly, like millennials, like their parents had no idea what they were doing, and they were using it to like code MySpace pages and create memes and like, post pictures of cats and videos.
Yeah.
And so I think like when we approach teen Gen AI usage, to think about it with that mind frame, right? They're still teenagers. They're using it to, just post jokes and
Yeah.
like make their lives easier.
Right. And so much more than even last year. Pew Research did a study in 2023 how many teens were using Chat GPT specifically for homework. It was 13%. Then they did the study again in the fall 2024, 26%. So
Wow.
that's doubled in a year,
Hmm.
which makes sense. They have it's so pervasive now, AI and especially Chat GPT. So this was specifically for their schoolwork.
Yeah.
And I think as it becomes more second nature, working on school, or as Pao was mentioning, in social or just kind of recreation, then that number will just increase year on year.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think we can also see it taking the trajectory of like Wikipedia, right? Where you were told like don't ever touch Wikipedia. It's, untrustworthy and all this. And eventually it gets folded into the process of how you like start a project. And it's
Hmm.
like in school they'll tell you like go to Wikipedia for an overview and then go to the sources and double check it. So I think we can expect to see that eventually as well with Gen AI.
It's interesting though, because it feels as though kids aren't having this talk, the Gen AI talk, if you will, with their teachers. Kartik Hossanegger, a professor of at the Wharton School of UPenn, was saying that many schools have adopted a Gen AI abstinence policy in the classroom, but that just means students aren't learning skills they will need in the future. He was saying that whilst there are pros and cons to using Gen AI in the classroom, we can't just pretend it doesn't exist. And he goes on to say that he lets his classroom students and his own kids play with Gen AI to help them refine their thought processes, providing them with rules about acceptable and inappropriate uses. But it does seem as though most kids are, a lot of kids are using it. Even people at work, people that are using it at work and not telling their employer, kids are using it and not telling their teachers. And it does feel like at some point you've got to kind of get your arms around this and say, look, this is a thing. It's better if we talk about how to use it properly as opposed to like pretending it doesn't exist and ignoring it. This also exists with,
Yeah.
sorry, please.
Oh no, I was gonna say I think that's a good rule of thumb to any technology, but especially the internet. Like the more that we know about it and the more we talk about how to use it responsibly, the better our relationship with it is gonna be.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because you mentioned parents, a lot of parents don't even know that their kids are using it. It was 37% of parents whose teen reported using at least one AI tool were aware of such use. So most parents didn't know their kids were using Gen AI. And half of parents say they've not talked to their teens about Gen AI use. So kids not having these conversations with teachers, with parents, about how to use it and how to use it responsibly. What's interesting though is despite the high usage of Gen AI, it's not trusted much at all. And so this, you were making the comp with millennials, I think, Pau, and this seems like a similar type of comp with folks in social media. People use it a lot but don't trust it at all, and it seems like a lot of young people are using Gen AI a lot but don't trust it at all. Pau, you were saying that chatbots, the second most frequently used Gen AI interface among teens, but only 36% of them trust the responses, according to the News Literacy Project. Half don't trust chatbots at all.
Yeah, I really love that study, and I wish we could have featured it more. So if anybody is interested in reading it, you should. But it pretty much looked at the difference in tech usage between kids who had received media literacy classes and kids who hadn't.
Mm,
And so there were big gaps in the levels of interpretation on a lot of topics. But I was surprised because for Gen AI, there was actually a smaller gap than it was for other technologies. So it kind of indicated that there's like some sort of an instinctive quality of kids having been online for so long and having already been exposed to it, where they're able to suss out um, the quality of the information and distinguish between generated images and generated videos.
hmm
And there's still a gap. Like I want to make it clear. Like there are still like there's still a portion of them that do trust it at face value, but they are skeptical, and I think
Yeah.
that bodes well for us. I think in a time
Yeah.
where we need good news.
Yeah.
Yeah. To your point, Pal, we also have data from Common Sense, a separate study where teens were asked to identify or if they've seen images or misleading videos, and a majority were able to identify. And many had seen, of course, they've seen misleading videos or been misled by fake content online. 35% said they had. So it is out and about.
Yeah. Yeah, there's kind of two things here. There's how to use the technology and then how to interpret the results of that technology. And Megan Morone of Axios was saying that the Gen AI is creating a brand new knowledge gap between teens and adults. And I think part of that knowledge gap is usage, and part of that knowledge gap is deciphering what's real and what's not. We talked about a couple of comps here with Gen AI and usage of it, how much it's used versus how much is not trusted, and compared that to social media, how much that's used and how much that is not trusted. Paola, what did you learn about where teens are spending their social media time?
So teens are still very much on social media, and the level of usage varies based on like how well into their teens they are. But one of the things I wanted to start out by pointing out is that for the third year in a row, our forecast is seeing a decrease in usage for TikTok and Snap, which is fascinating.
Mm,
But that being said, they are still spending more time on TikTok, like twice the amount of time that on TikTok than they are on Snap and Instagram.
yeah.
So TikTok still reigns supreme for the
Okay.
time being.
I want to hammer that point home because that's shocking. So, what Paola's saying there is that teens, they're overall spending less and less time with their favorite social platforms. So TikTok, as you mentioned, since 2022, the time spent on TikTok by teens has been going down, from like an hour and 30 to like an hour and 15. Same with Snapchat. Teens will spend 5 fewer minutes on Snapchat this in 2026 than they did in 2022. It's about 30 minutes. Instagram's the outlier here, right? I think that's going up a little bit for teens. by about 5 minutes from 2022 to 2026. But this is, I mean, it's really quite shocking to see numbers go down for social media for any group, but particularly for this group. Paolo, I really like the way that you were talking about a starter kit of sorts for of social media platforms for kids.
Yeah, I mean, you turn into a teenager, you're really excited about it, and you're like, all right, what do I need to make my mark as a teenager, right? Like, I
Uh-huh.
need to get on the basics of the platforms, which is, I think Instagram has surpassed Facebook as like a necessity, although some teens do still use Facebook. But Instagram is kind of like a calling card now, right? And it feels safer to give out your Insta or your Snap, than it is to give out your phone number.
Hmm.
And if you don't like the person and you don't want to hang out with them or you don't want to talk to them, you just delete them.
Yeah. Oh,
So
goodness.
yeah, yeah.
The
Yeah,
number
you
of
get
people have
booted
asked
out.
me have asked me for my Instagram, and when I tell them I don't have it, they look at me like I just disappeared. They're
Yeah, get with the
mortified.
times,
They're
Marcus.
like,
We
"Well, what
need,
do I? So
yeah. How do I
how do I
reach you?
contact you?" I'm like, "Phone number? No,
That's too
okay.
personal. No.
Page me. Forget it." Uh, we talked about Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, the one that gets forgotten and the one that's the biggest, it seems, for everyone. And when we're talking about the littlest of people, the kids, the same was true. YouTube,
Oh,
maybe because it's not a social network per se, it's
Right.
social media. Paula, tell us about how important YouTube is to this group.
yeah, YouTube is a juggernaut. And like when I think about where these kids are no longer, like when they're no longer spending their time on social, I do think there's a bit of social fatigue, but I think they're just redistributing their time. And I would suspect that YouTube is the main culprit and where they're shifting a lot of their time spent to. As we saw in the Gen Alpha report, like YouTube is one of the biggest, if not the biggest platform that they use. And actually, I should amend that. It is the biggest platform that children use. And what we're seeing, the Gen Alpha report focused on kids now, but the teens that we're looking at were children who grew up with YouTube. So they're carrying those habits into adulthood.
Hmm.
And it remains like the leading platform that they use and where they spend the majority of their time. And um, we'll do a report on YouTube demographics later in the year and sort of break that down more, but we cannot overstate the importance of YouTube in their digital lives.
Yeah, when I think about 2020, 5 years ago, these teens were set between 7 and 12. And those are just those core years of everything moved to, connected TV and video, and YouTube was really firmly cemented as a habit.
Hmm.
So it's an hour and 18 minutes daily teens are spending according to our forecast. That is a staggering amount of
Wow.
time each day.
It is the platform with the widest reach when it comes to
Mm,
teens.
okay. Okay.
Yeah, so it's the platform that is used across all, like the most by all teens,
Okay.
whereas it's more diversified on social
And
platforms.
it's a big part of that, just the fact that the YouTube has this, they're in this unique position where they have an on-ramp in YouTube Kids. So I just looked it up. It's been out for about nearly 10 years now, but that kind of introduces children to the brand at a young age.
Yeah, I think so. And it's a level of comfort too, right? And in being able to navigate it and like the content, I think also because there's more of direct interaction between the viewers and the creators, the content's kind of able to grow and shift with the kids in a way that I think traditional media sometimes is really disconnected.
Okay. And you were saying that a lot of young people using YouTube for music, like a shocking
Yeah.
amount.
Yeah, music is huge. One, you can find really niche artists, although the majority of music discovery still happens on Spotify.
Hmm.
But yeah, music is a huge one. You just have it in the background, right? Or you're watching music videos with your friends, which is like a big social activity. Or
Hmm.
um, it's like one of the biggest ways to stay connected to artists that you're following.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you said close to 4 in 5 kids using teens using YouTube for music playing. I think it was for Precise TV and Giraffe Insights data. So they're using Gen AI a fair amount. They're on social media. Young people traditionally have liked to play video games since video games were invented. It's another thing that they do with their time. But how has that engagement with digital gaming changed, Paula, and what is it like today?
Yeah, again, we saw this in the Gen Alpha report, and I think teens really cement this is that video gaming is a social activity for teens today, right? And it always has been, but it used to be that you'd have to go to someone's house and like plug in the device and make sure you got enough controllers. And now, kids have greater access to technology because they can either play on their phones or they inherit or share consoles with their parents or like siblings, or they're gifted the latest console themselves, or they save up for it. But it's so much easier, right, to just log on and play with your friends, and make the same jokes that you would if you were hanging out in front of a 7-Eleven or loitering at the movie theater. Like, but you're doing it from the comfort of your own home, and you're like having a collaborative activity.
Yeah.
It seems more efficient to a generation that has most of their day-to-day activities already occurring in a digital space.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the leading ways teens consume content. We have that Precise TV and Giraffe Insights that you mentioned, Marcus. But the leading way to consume content, digital content, is YouTube. But then video games and then games on a phone or a tablet are just behind YouTube. So such a popular activity.
Paola, I want to come back to the point you were saying about helping them develop their relationship with their friends. There is some research from Pew Research Center that asked how teens playing video games has affected aspects of their lives. 56% problem solving, 47% friendships. Now, they did admit that their sleep has suffered considerably, as their school performance, but on the plus side, they're making new friends. Good.
Yeah.
So Paola, let's end with this. What is one of the biggest takeaways about teens for you from your research?
One of the things that stood out to me is that there's a huge, huge change in mindset within the teen years, right? From entering your teens, like you still have a lot of childlike habits, carrying over a lot of those tendencies, but it's a huge, huge shift from that to exiting your teens and going into adulthood and carrying all these responsibilities. So when thinking about how to reach teens, like I would really suggest considering the different life stages that occur even within those couple of years, in order to hone in on who it is that you're speaking to.
Yeah. And you had some research that showed that there's a pretty big difference in social media adoption based on if you're a very young teenager versus a slightly older teenager. The usage can shift quite quickly.
Yeah. Social media usage usually ramps up around age 15, which makes sense, right? You're getting more independence, you're going out more, you're probably doing more social activities. So you're trying to stay connected to people more.
Yeah. I think Instagram had the biggest spike of adoption from young teen to older teen. At what point does a teenager become just a nightmare individual? 15 is my guess.
I mean, if you ask my mom, it's always
the whole time.
15 to 17, according to Pew Research.
Official ages. Well, the full report is called US Teen Digital Habits 2025. Pro Plus subscribers can head to emarketer.com. Link is in the show notes, of course. It just came out last Friday, so hot off the press. That's all we've got time for today's episode. Thank you so much to my guests. As always, thank you to Paola.
Thank you so much, Marcus.
Yes, indeed. Thank you to Jenny.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you to the whole editing crew, Victoria, John Lance, and Danny, Stuart, who runs the team, and Sophie does our social media. Thanks to everyone for listening in to Behind the Numbers, an eMarketer video podcast. Tomorrow, we have our monthly banking and payment show episode with host Rob Rubin, where he'll be speaking about whether AI is ready to be our financial advisor.